72 hours ago, I was just another female manager pushed out of the biggest strategy meeting of the year. 3 days later, I walked out with $1.2 million, an exclusive contract. And that panicked look on his face when he realized I was the one who pulled the rug from under him. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to sue. All I needed was a USB drive, one phone call, and a better memory than he thought I had. This is how I turned his $1 million mistake into my life-changing moment. My name is Eleanor Brooks, and until last Monday, I was the strategy director at Northwell Edge, a product development consultancy nestled in downtown Denver. At 38, I'd built my reputation on turning impossible projects into $1 million wins. I wasn't just good at my job, I was the architect behind our most lucrative strategies. But apparently, that made me dangerous. David Kessler swept into our company 6 months ago like a Category 5 hurricane in an Armani suit. Our new CEO came with a Stanford MBA, a track record of transforming companies, and an unspoken policy. Women who think too independently don't last long in his inner circle. I'd watched him systematically replace every female executive with yes men who wouldn't challenge his authority. I thought my results would protect me. I was wrong. The $15 million Voxen Labs project was supposed to be my crowning achievement. I'd spent 8 months crafting the strategic framework from scratch, building relationships with their team, understanding their market position down to the molecular level. Every projection, every pivot point, every risk mitigation strategy, it all came from my brain, my sleepless nights, my relentless drive to deliver perfection. That Monday morning, I walked into conference room A, expecting to lead the final presentation prep. Instead, I found David at the head of the table, my strategy documents spread before him like conquered territory. "Elena," he said, not bothering to look up. "Good. You're here. We need to discuss your new role." The room was full of his imported lieutenants, men who'd been with the company less than 2 months, but somehow ranked above my 5 years of proven success. They avoided my eyes like cowards. As we enter the final phase with Voxen, David continued, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "I think it's best if you transition to an internal advisory position. Less client-facing, more supportive. Supportive. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "I designed this entire strategy," I said, keeping my voice level despite the fury building in my chest. "I've been Voxen's primary contact for, which is exactly why we need fresh eyes for the closing phase." He finally looked at me then, and I saw it clearly. This wasn't business. This was personal. I threatened him simply by existing, by being too competent, too connected, too unwilling to play the submissive role he'd scripted for me. By 11 a.m., I discovered he'd already revoked my access to the project management system. By noon, my name had been scrubbed from the client communication channels. By 2 p.m. I sat in my corner office, soon to be someone else's, no doubt, staring at my computer screen and feeling something cold and calculating replaced my initial rage. David Kessler had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He just didn't know it yet. I didn't slam doors. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't even update my LinkedIn status to open to work. Instead, I did what I do best. I strategized. That Monday evening, I sat in my home office with a glass of Malbec and my laptop, watching the cursor blink on a blank document. The initial sting of humiliation had crystallized into something far more useful. Cold, calculated determination. David thought he'd neutralized a threat. What he'd actually done was activate a weapon. I pulled up my personal backup drive, a habit that had saved me more than once in my career. There it was, every draft, every iteration, every time-stamped version of the Voxen Labs strategy. But, more importantly, I had the original emails where I'd warned David about a critical security flaw in our project management system. He'd dismissed my concerns, calling them unnecessarily cautious and typical overthinking. The flaw was simple but devastating. Our draft strategies were being uploaded to a shared server without proper encryption or access controls. Anyone with basic IT knowledge could potentially access copy, or claim ownership of unmarked intellectual property. I documented this risk in 3 separate emails, each ignored or dismissed with David's signature condescension. Now, as I reviewed the metadata on my original strategy documents, I smiled for the first time since that morning's ambush. Every file contained my digital fingerprint, creation dates, modification history, even embedded comments in my name. David, in his arrogance and haste to claim my work, had uploaded everything to that vulnerable server without stripping the metadata or adding his own attribution. He'd literally stolen documented evidence of his own theft. But I needed more than just proof. I needed leverage. I needed to turn his power play into my payday. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 2 years. Alex Monroe. Back when we'd both been struggling associates at a tech law firm. Alex had specialized in intellectual property disputes. Now he ran his own practice, focusing on protecting creators and innovators from corporate theft. If anyone could help me understand my options, it was Alex. Elena Brooks. His voice was warm with surprise when he answered. Tell me you're finally starting your own firm and need legal counsel. Not quite, I said, then explained the situation with clinical precision. No emotional theatrics, just facts. The strategy I'd created, the documentation I'd maintained, David's systematic exclusion and his critical error in handling proprietary information. Alex listened without interrupting, occasionally making thoughtful sounds. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You know what you have here, right? His voice had shifted from friendly to professional. This isn't just wrongful termination territory. If you created this strategy independently, documented your authorship, and can prove they're using it without proper attribution or compensation, Elena, you might own the rights to a $15 million project. My hand tightened on my wine glass. Explain. Colorado law is very clear about intellectual property created by employees. If the strategy was developed outside your standard job duties, or if you can prove you retained certain rights to your creative work, which those metadata trails suggest you can, then Northwell Edge might be in serious breach of IP law by using your work without permission. And if they've already promised this strategy to Voxen Labs, then they're in even deeper trouble. They'd be selling something they don't technically own. That's fraud territory. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, seeing not the dismissed director, but the architect of David's downfall. What would you need from me to make this airtight? Everything. Every document, every email, every shred of evidence that this strategy originated with you. And Elena. He paused. Don't do anything rash. Don't access any company systems you're locked out of. Don't give them any ammunition to paint you as the aggressor. Be smarter than they are. After we hung up, I spent the next 4 hours methodically organizing my evidence, creation timestamps, email threads, meeting notes in my handwriting, photographed and dated, even recordings of strategy sessions where I'd outlined key concepts. Colorado was a one-party consent state, and I'd been recording my own presentations for years to improve my delivery. By 3 a.m. Tuesday morning, I had a digital fortress of proof, but I wasn't planning to siege Northwell Edge. I was planning something far more elegant. David had made 3 critical errors. He'd underestimated me, he'd stolen from me, and he'd done it all on an insecure system that I'd specifically warned him about. In 72 hours, he'd learned that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who fights back immediately. It's the one who takes the time to aim for the jugular. I closed my laptop and finished my wine, already tasting victory. David Kessler wanted to play games with my career, fine. But he should have checked the rulebook first, because I wrote it. Tuesday morning arrived with Denver's typical crystal clear sky, but I was already 3 moves ahead on my mental chessboard, while David was probably celebrating his successful power play over morning espresso. I was executing phase 1 of my counter-strike. First order of business, recovering my original strategy documents from my personal archives. Not the watered-down versions David's team was peddling to Voxen Labs, but the comprehensive framework I'd developed during countless nights and weekends. The beauty of being a meticulous planner is that I'd saved everything, not on company servers, but on my personal encrypted cloud storage, every draft, every revision, every brilliant insight that David thought he now owned. I pulled up the master document, Voxen Labs Market Penetration Strategy V1.0, E. Brooks. Created January 15, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Last modified by Elena Brooks. 847 tracked changes, 312 comments, all bearing my digital signature. The metadata was pristine, untouched, irrefutable. But I needed to be surgical about this. Alex had been clear, no rash moves, no emotional reactions. So I did what any strategic thinker would do. I started building my case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. By 10 a.m., I'd compiled a devastating portfolio, screenshots of the unsecured server where David had uploaded my work, email threads where I'd explicitly retained rights to strategic frameworks I developed outside office hours. Most damning of all, a recorded Zoom call from January where I'd presented the strategy to our internal team, with David himself saying, "This is brilliant, Elena. Make sure you watermark this as proprietary. We don't want anyone stealing your intellectual property." The irony was delicious. At 11:30 a.m., I made my second move. I needed an ally inside Voxen Labs, someone who valued integrity over corporate politics. I thought of Melissa Hart, their senior director of strategic partnerships. We'd worked together for months, and she'd always appreciated my direct approach and thorough documentation. More importantly, she had zero tolerance for corporate games that could expose Voxen to legal liability. I crafted my email carefully. "Melissa, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to reach out regarding the Northwell Edge partnership strategy currently under discussion. As the original architect of this framework, I feel obligated to inform you of some concerning developments regarding the strategy's ownership and documentation. I've attached materials that may be relevant to your due diligence process. Given Voxen's commitment to ethical business practices, I thought you should be aware of certain discrepancies in how this intellectual property is being presented. I'm available for a confidential discussion at your convenience. Best regards, Elena Brooks, Independent Strategic Consultant." I didn't accuse, I didn't threaten. I simply planted a seed of doubt wrapped in professional concern. The attached files included my original time-stamped strategy and a subtle reference to the unsecured server issue, enough to make any competent legal team very nervous. By 2 p.m., while David was probably schmoozing with Voxen's executives using my ideas, I was already implementing Phase 2. I logged into my personal LinkedIn and updated my bio. Strategic consultant specializing in market penetration frameworks for tech companies, creator of the Voxen Labs expansion strategy. It was a shot across the bow that David wouldn't see coming. In the corporate world, LinkedIn updates spread like wildfire. Within hours, people would be asking questions. At 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Melissa Hart. "Elena, I just reviewed your email. Can we speak privately? This is concerning." Her voice carried the exact tone I'd hoped for, professional alarm mixed with personal indignation. Melissa didn't just manage partnerships, she protected them. And she'd just realized her company might be walking into a legal minefield. "Of course," I replied smoothly. "I appreciate your prompt response. To be clear, I have tremendous respect for Voxen Labs. My concern is ensuring that your company has full transparency about what you're actually purchasing from Northwell Edge." "What we're purchasing?" Her voice sharpened. "Elena, are you telling me the strategy David Kessler is presenting isn't Northwell's property?" "I'm saying you should ask to see the metadata on those documents. Check the creation dates. Look for attribution. And Melissa?" I paused for effect. "Ask David why the strategy director who created this framework isn't in any of these meetings." The silence on her end spoke volumes. In the corporate ecosystem, legal liability is the apex predator everyone fears. I just introduced it into David's perfectly orchestrated presentation. "Send me everything," she said finally. "Everything you have. We're putting this deal on hold until our legal team reviews it." After we hung up, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. David thought he'd checkmate me by removing me from the board. He didn't realize I'd already changed the game entirely. By Tuesday evening, I'd transformed from discarded employee to potential kingmaker, or in this case, kingslayer. The 72-hour clock was ticking, and David Kessler was about to learn why you should never underestimate a woman who keeps receipts. Wednesday morning hit different. I woke up to 17 missed calls from Northwell Edge's main line and a text from a former colleague. All hell is breaking loose. What did you do? I smiled over my coffee. Phase 3 was about to begin. By 9 a.m., Melissa Hart had done exactly what I'd expected. She'd sent my documentation to Voxen's legal team, who'd immediately flagged the deal. But I wasn't done. While David was undoubtedly scrambling to explain why his million-dollar strategy had another author's fingerprints all over it, I was preparing the killing blow. I pulled up the original strategy document and began working on something new. Voxen Labs Market Penetration Strategy V2.0, Enhanced Framework. This wasn't just an update, it was an evolution. Every weakness in the original plan, every optimization I'd thought of since January, every insight I'd gained but hadn't shared, it all went into this new version. If version 1.0 was a Ferrari, version 2.0 was a rocket ship. At 10:30 a.m., Alex Monroe called. "Elena, I just got an interesting phone call from Northwell's legal counsel. They're fishing, trying to figure out what you know and what you have." "And?" "I told them my client has documented proof of intellectual property creation and is exploring all legal options. They nearly choked." He paused. "They also hinted at a potential settlement if you'd sign an NDA. "Not interested," I said, typing furiously. "I'm not looking for hush money. I'm looking for justice and a future." Speaking of which, Alex's voice carried a hint of amusement. "I had another interesting call this morning. From a venture capitalist named Marcus Reed. Says he knows you." Marcus Reed. We'd met at a conference 2 years ago where I'd presented on strategic market entry. He'd tried to poach me then, offering to fund my own consultancy. I'd been too loyal to Northwell to consider it. How things change. What did he want? "Apparently, your LinkedIn update caught his attention. He wants to know if you're finally ready to discuss that partnership." The pieces were falling into place faster than even I had anticipated. "Give me his number." By noon, I was sitting in Marcus Reed's downtown office, my enhanced strategy printed and bound like a master's thesis. Marcus was exactly as I remembered, sharp-eyed, silver-haired, and utterly unsentimental about business. "Elena Brooks," he said, gesturing to a chair. "The strategist who turned down my offer to stay loyal to a company that just threw her under the bus. How's that working out?" "It's working out perfectly," I said, sliding the bound strategy across his desk. "Because now I come with proof of concept and a $15 million case study." He flipped through the document, his expression growing more interested with each page. "This is the Voxen strategy. This is what the Voxen strategy should have been. Version 2.0. The one they'll need when they realize version 1.0, the one David Kessler is pitching without attribution, has fundamental flaws I intentionally left uncorrected." Marcus looked up sharply. "You sabotaged your own strategy?" "I future-proofed it," I corrected. "Every strategy needs evolution. I just made sure I'm the only one who knows how to evolve this one." Page 47 outlines 3 critical market shifts that will hit Voxen's sector within 6 months. The original strategy doesn't account for them. This one does. And Northwell Edge is about to lose a $15 million deal because their CEO thought he could steal from the wrong woman. I leaned back, matching his scrutiny. But I'm not here to dwell on the past. I'm here to discuss the future. Specifically, a strategic consultancy that doesn't just advise companies, it partners with them. Equity stakes, long-term relationships, real skin in the game. Marcus closed the document and studied me. "What do you need?" $1.2 million in seed funding, office space, your network. In exchange, You get 30% equity in Orion Path Strategies and first look at all our client partnerships. Why should I bet on you? I smiled. Because in about 6 hours, Voxen Labs is going to realize they need a new strategic partner, one who actually owns the IP they're buying. And when they do, I'll be the only option on the table with a ready-to-implement enhanced framework and a clean legal slate. You orchestrated all of this, Marcus said slowly. The leak to Voxen, the legal concerns, the timing. You played everyone. I protected my intellectual property and positioned myself for success. I countered. If that happens to expose David Kessler's theft and Northwell's toxic culture, that's just karmic justice. He laughed, a sharp bark of genuine appreciation. Deal. But I want 25%, not 30%. Deal. We shook hands, and just like that, Orion Path Strategies was born. While David was probably in crisis meetings trying to salvage a deal built on stolen goods, I was signing partnership papers for my own company. By Wednesday evening, I had a business, a backer, and a battle plan. The 72-hour deadline was approaching, and David Kessler's million-dollar mistake was about to become my fortune. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of chaos I'd orchestrated but hadn't fully anticipated. My phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. with a text from my former assistant. Elena, you need to see this. David's losing his mind. I opened my laptop to find an email blast David had sent to the entire Northwell Edge staff at 5:47 a.m., a rambling, defensive message about protecting company assets and addressing spurious claims by disgruntled former employees. The desperation reeked through every poorly constructed sentence. He'd even had the audacity to claim that the Voxen strategy was a collaborative effort that belonged solely to Northwell Edge. Perfect. He'd just put his lies in writing to 200 witnesses. By 8 a.m., I was implementing the next phase of my plan. I composed a formal letter to Northwell Edge's board of directors, not the CEO, but the people who actually owned the company. The same board members who'd hired David 6 months ago and were probably wondering why their star acquisition was suddenly radioactive. Dear board members, I write to you regarding urgent matters affecting Northwell Edge's reputation and legal standing. As the creator and documented owner of the strategic framework currently being marketed to Voxen Labs, I have a fiduciary duty to inform you of the following. The strategy was developed by me independently, outside of standard work hours, with full documentation of ownership. Your CEO, David Kessler, has attempted to present this work as company property without proper attribution or compensation. This action has already caused Voxen Labs to pause their $15 million partnership pending legal review. I have evidence of Mr. Kessler's knowledge of the IP ownership issues, which he chose to ignore. Attached, please find relevant documentation. I remain open to an amicable resolution that protects all parties' interests. Respectfully, Elena Brooks, CEO, Orion Path Strategies. I CC'd Alex Monroe and waited. In corporate warfare, going over the CEO's head to the board is the nuclear option. But David had left me no choice. He'd made this personal when he tried to erase my contributions. At 11 a.m., the counterattack began. David sent a cease and desist letter through Northwell's lawyers, claiming I was engaging in corporate espionage and tortious interference. The letter was so full of legal holes that Alex actually laughed when he read it. He's panicking, Alex said. This is what desperation looks like in legalese. He knows he can't prove ownership, so he's trying to intimidate you. Let him try, I said, already composing my next move. At 2 p.m., I received an unexpected call. It was Richard Holbrook, chairman of Northwell Edge's board, a man I'd met exactly twice in 5 years. Ms. Brooks. His voice was carefully neutral. I've reviewed your letter and the attached materials. This is troubling. I imagine it is, I replied calmly. I spent 5 years building value for Northwell Edge. I'm not interested in destroying it, but I won't allow my work to be stolen, either. What do you want? What I've always wanted, recognition for my work, and fair compensation for my intellectual property. Though now, my terms have changed. Go on. Orion Path Strategies now owns the enhanced version of the Voxen framework, version 2.0. We're prepared to license it to Northwell Edge for the right price. Or, I paused for effect. We'll work directly with Voxen Labs as their strategic partner. Your choice. The silence stretched. I could practically hear him calculating the cost of fighting me versus paying me. And if we refuse, then Voxen Labs learns about David's attempt to sell them stolen IP. Your $15 million deal evaporates. And I suspect your investors will have questions about why you hired a CEO who destroyed a major partnership in his first 6 months. I kept my voice pleasant, professional. Oh, and the enhanced strategy I've developed, the one that addresses market shifts David's version ignores? That stays with me. You've thought this through. Strategic thinking is what you used to pay me for. He sighed. I'll need to convene an emergency board meeting. Can you give us 24 hours? You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. After that, I meet directly with Melissa Hart at Voxen to present Orion Path as their new strategic partner. After hanging up, I sent a quick message to Melissa. Friday, 6 p.m., I have solutions to discuss. Her response was immediate. Yes, bring everything. Thursday evening found me in my new office, a sleek space in downtown Denver that Marcus had arranged with stunning efficiency. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker to life. Somewhere out there, David Kessler was probably realizing that his power play had backfired spectacularly. He'd tried to bury me in that conference room on Monday. Instead, he'd simply freed me to build something better. Tomorrow would bring the final act of this 72-hour drama, and I was ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Heard through the grapevine that Northwell's having an emergency board meeting. David's on thin ice. Well played. I smiled at my reflection in the darkened window. Well played, indeed. Friday morning arrived like a prize-fighter's final round bell. I dressed carefully, my best power suit, the one that made me feel invincible. Today wasn't just about winning, it was about rewriting the entire game. At 9 a.m. sharp, Richard Holbrook called. The board has met. David Kessler has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I said nothing. Waiting. In negotiations, silence is a weapon. We're prepared to make you an offer, he continued. Return to Northwell Edge as Chief Strategy Officer, reporting directly to the board, your full reinstatement, plus a 40% salary increase and acknowledgement of your IP contributions. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this offer. Now? I appreciate the offer, Richard, but I've moved on. Orion Path Strategies is my future. Then what will it take to resolve this? Simple. Northwell Edge can license the original strategy from me for $500,000, plus residuals on the Voxen deal. But the enhanced strategy, version 2.0, remains exclusively with Orion Path. We'll offer it directly to Voxen Labs. That's highway robbery. That's market value for stolen intellectual property, I countered. Or would you prefer I detail this situation to the Wall Street Journal? I believe they're always interested in corporate governance failures. The threat hung between us like a loaded weapon. Richard was smart enough to know that the scandal would tank Northwell's valuation and spook every potential client. I'll need to discuss this with the board. You have until 3 p.m. After that, I'm walking into Voxen Labs with a better offer than anything Northwell can provide. At noon, an unexpected visitor appeared at my new office, David Kessler himself. Security called up, and against my better judgment, I agreed to see him. I wanted to look him in the eye one last time. He entered my office, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his facade of control completely shattered. Nice space, he said, trying for casual and failing miserably. It is, I agreed, not offering him a seat. What do you want, David? To understand how we got here. I almost laughed. We got here because you confused intimidation with leadership. You thought erasing me from a project would somehow make you its creator. You forgot that in the digital age, everything leaves a trail. I was protecting the company's interests. You were protecting your ego. I cut him off. You couldn't stand that a woman you couldn't control had created something you couldn't replicate. So you tried to steal it. His jaw tightened. I could fight this. Claim you developed it on company time. Try it, I said coolly. I have 3 years of timestamps showing evening and weekend work. Emails where you acknowledged my independent creation. And David? I have the recording where you told me to protect my intellectual property. Your own words will bury you. He deflated then, the last of his corporate armor falling away. The board wants me gone. Consequences, I said simply. You played a game you didn't understand against an opponent you underestimated. This is what losing looks like. What would it take for you to withdraw your claims? Now I did laugh. You're seriously asking me to save you after you tried to destroy my career? I'm asking what your price is. Everyone has one. I walked to the window, letting him sweat. My price? It's watching you explain to every future employer why your 6-month tenure ended with a massive IP scandal and a lost $15 million deal. It's knowing that every time you Google yourself, this failure will be the first result. My price, David, is your complete and total professional destruction. I turned back to face him. And the beautiful part? I don't have to do anything more. You've already paid it. He left without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. I felt no sympathy. He'd drawn first blood. I'd simply finished the fight. At 2:47 p.m., Richard Holbrook called back. The board accepts your terms. $500,000 licensing fee plus 20% of net profits from the Voxen deal. 25%, I countered. Done. I'll need it in writing within the hour. Or I walk into Voxen with exclusive rights to both strategies. You'll have it. By 4 p.m., I had a signed agreement worth potentially $4 million over the life of the Voxen contract. But I wasn't done. The licensing fee was just the appetizer. Voxen Labs was the main course. At 5:30 p.m., I walked into my meeting with Melissa Hart carrying 2 bound presentations. The original strategy Northwell was pitching, and Orion Path's enhanced version. By 5:45, she was leaning forward in her chair, completely absorbed. This is light years ahead of what Kessler showed us, she said. How quickly could you implement this? With the right partnership structure, we could start Monday. What kind of partnership? I smiled. One where Orion Path doesn't just advise, we invest. Skin in the game, shared risk, shared reward, true strategic partnership. By 7 p.m. Friday, Melissa and I had hammered out the framework of a revolutionary partnership. Orion Path would provide strategic guidance for a reduced fee in exchange for a 2% equity stake in Voxen's new market expansion. It was unheard of for a consultancy of our size, but my enhanced strategy had proven our worth. I'll need board approval, Melissa said, but I can't imagine they'll say no. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. She paused, studying me. Can I ask you something? Did you plan all of this from the moment Kessler pushed you out? I considered lying, playing it off as luck or circumstance. But Melissa deserved honesty. I planned for justice. Everything else was just opportunity meeting preparation. She smiled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. By Friday night, the news was spreading through Denver's business community like wildfire. David Kessler, the Wonder Boy CEO, out after 6 months. Northwell Edge hemorrhaging talent and credibility. And a new player on the scene, Orion Path Strategies, founded by the woman Kessler had tried to bury. Marcus called as I was packing up my office. Voxen's board approved the partnership. Congratulations. You just turned a $1.2 million investment into a potential $30 million valuation. I sat back in my chair, finally allowing myself to feel the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. In 72 hours, I'd gone from discarded employee to CEO of my own company. With a multi-million-dollar partnership and the satisfaction of watching my tormentor fall. Saturday morning, I returned to Northwell Edge one last time to collect my personal items. The building felt different now, smaller, less imposing. I wasn't the same woman who'd been ambushed in conference room A on Monday. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and there he was, David Kessler, cleaning out his office, the CEO nameplate already removed from his door. He looked up as I passed, and our eyes met for a brief moment. "Elena," he said quietly. I paused at my old office door. "David." "For what it's worth," he said. "Your strategy was brilliant. You just thought you could take it." I finished. "And that I'd let you." He nodded slowly. "I underestimated you." "No," I corrected, entering my office for the last time. "You never estimated me at all. I was just an obstacle to remove, a threat to neutralize. You never saw me as a person with my own ambitions, my own power, my own ability to fight back." I collected my few remaining items, a photo of my team, my lucky pen, the small cactus that had somehow survived 5 years of corporate life. As I walked back past his office, I stopped one final time. "You asked me once what kind of leader I thought you were," I said. He looked up, confused. "It was in your first all-hands meeting. You asked for honest feedback." I remember. "See, I never answered because I knew you wouldn't like it. But I'll tell you now." I shifted my box to one hip. "You're the kind of leader who sees strength in others as a threat instead of an asset, who mistakes fear for respect and control for power. You're the kind of leader who creates their own downfall because they can't imagine a world where collaboration beats domination." I walked to the elevator, my heels clicking with purpose on the marble floor. "Oh, and David? The strategy has a kill switch I built in. A flaw that only I know how to fix. Northwell licensed the right to use it, but when it fails in 6 months, and it will, they'll need Orion Path to save it. I'll make sure to send you a thank you card when that check clears." The elevator doors closed on his stunned face, and I descended one last time from the tower that had been my professional home for 5 years. But I wasn't falling. I was rising. Monday would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new mountains to climb. But for now, I sat in my car in the Northwell Edge parking lot, looking up at the building that had tried to define my limits, and smiled. 72 hours. That's all it had taken to transform David Kessler's $1 million mistake into my fortune. He'd thought he was burying my career. Instead, he'd planted the seeds of an empire. My phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from former colleagues, partnership inquiries from potential clients, interview requests from business journalists. The story was already becoming legend in Denver's business circles. The woman who turned corporate betrayal into entrepreneurial triumph. I started my car and drove toward my new office, my new future, my new life. In the rearview mirror, Northwell Edge grew smaller and smaller until it was just another building in a city full of possibilities. Game over. I won. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're in. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate revenge and triumph, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced a similar situation at work? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below.